We're about to read in this special two Torah portion, Kitisa and Para, both dealing with the purity, final building of the ancient tabernacle. And the GEMARA tells us about Bezalel, the architect, some type of dialogue between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu, between Moses and God, in regard to building the tabernacle and Bezalel. God said to him, "Va'amale oto ruach Elohim bechokma ubitvuna ubedat ubekol melacha." So God filled him, Bezalel, with wisdom. But then God asked Moses, "Are the people accepted him?" And Moses said, "If you fill him up with all this wisdom, for sure we're going to agree and accept." And the GEMARA describe how in that dialogue God said, "No, that's not enough. You need to have the people who accepted that leadership." That's what we said in a grace after meal in Birkat Hamazon, "V'nimtza chen v'sechel tov b'nei Elokim ve'adam." We should find a grace in the eye of the Lord and in the eye of the people, which is, it's not enough to have all the wisdom that the Almighty give to a person and the special talents of leadership. The person needs to have the people. He said about Mordechai, as great as it was with saving the people, the Megillah ended, it's a famous statement in the GEMARA in Megillah, "V'ratzui lerov echav," that he was accepted to most of his brothers, most of his generation. Why? Some said it's because when it's come to leadership, not everyone is going to like leadership, have those challenges all the times with people that criticize. But also the whole idea of having the majority of the people who followed him, that's the beauty of Bezalel, that's the beauty of building the tabernacle, to have the act of unity under the leadership of Bezalel and Moshe Rabbeinu. We are getting closer and closer to the festival of Passover, and we explained that at this time we always share several halachot before we start our daf. The first is the whole idea of lechem oni, the bread of poverty. We call the matzah, we pointed at matzah, and we call the matzah lechem oni. It's based on the pasuk, on a sentence, book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, that tells us that it's lechem oni. Now the GEMARA in Psachim, page 35, they said that the reason that the name lechem oni, the bread of poverty, is because plain food made only of flour with no other additives, no other ingredients. And with that, the whole matzah shmura. What does matzah shmura, guarded matzah, mean? So matzah shmura is the matzah that is made from wheat that was grounded from the time of the harvest, so that it does not come in contact with any water. And matzah bilti shmura, matzah that it's unguarded, apply to matzah that's supervised to prevent leavening, but only from the time of kneading and not from the time of harvest. So is it permissible to eat non-shmura matzah on Pesach? The answer is yes, because it's matzah that is kosher for Pesach, but on the first night we try to be strict about eating matzah shmura. So if you notice, there is a hand matzah and a machine matzah. How is hand matzah made? So the answer is the dough is made from wheat and mayim shelanu, water that was supervised overnight. And before the needling, we said L'shem matzat mitzvah, and we put it in a low temperature to maintain that the dough is prepared, and then we care to take it, not to let 18 minutes pass, which is the time to take for dough to leaven from the time the water is poured and until after baking. And since we use the term mayim shelanu, it's important to know that mayim shelanu, that was water that drawn from the spring and was kept lanu, right, in a closed container. Now, also, it's a Mishnah Berurah said in Siman Taf Samech, he said that matzat mitzvah. What is matzat mitzvah? Matzah of the commandment. No, you tell me, what is matzat mitzvah?
Matzah mitzvah.
What?
Is the one that we're supposed to eat for the Pesach, but it's made around.
Okay, so this is the 3 matzot that baked on the 14th of Nisan.
Okay.
And there are many people who are very scrupulous to bake the separate matzot on the eve of Passover. And it's a special matzah, it's matzat mitzvah for the purpose of Passover itself. I'm in the final stage of about, I'm not exact, about 11 years of work in a new book. It's called Passover Talk. I have those series of books, Table Talk, Root Talk, etc. So in a Passover Talk I have about 500 questions on Pesach, and some of them is the question that I just share with you from the upcoming book, or manuscript. The page we're going to study, Mitzvah Hashem, is page 149. We're getting very close to the siyum, the completion of the Tractate Shabbat. And we are dealing here with first the melacha of mochek, the same way as we are forbidden to write something on Shabbat, we also forbidden to erase anything on Shabbat. So there are certain circumstances that we are concerned about erasing. There are situations we just mentioned yesterday when someone have guests and he invited the guest and he have a list, and sometimes he get to that point that he needs to make decisions, who and what and where and how, and the fear is that he's going to erase name and change and write, and therefore we involve with that type of category of melacha of a memachek, one who erase something that it's already written. We also going to deal a little bit with the law of rebit. We discussed yesterday the law of interest, and time allow we elaborate on that. Top of the page 149. We read in the Mishnah that we cannot read the list of the guests on Shabbat. My Tama, what's the reason that it's forbidden? Rav Bibi Amar, Gzera Shema Imchok, is decree that he is going to erase. Imagine a situation, you go to the synagogue on Friday and you have a list of, let's say, 50 friends, and you prepare food for 55 friends, and all of a sudden when they come, this one bring his friend and this one bring his family, etc., and all of a sudden you realize that if that's going to happen, you are running out of food. So you tell the shamash, the ushers, or whoever is in charge, you say that, no, I gave you all this list, but make sure that only 40 people will come. Why? Because you're afraid that it will be overwhelming. So now the fear is that you're going to erase some of the names from the list. That's what Rashi said. The Meiri added to that, and he said that the erasing is forbidden only if by the Torah law. If you're planning to write something instead, in other words, you erase something and you're planning to write something in that place. But the rabbis, the Khatam Sofer said that the rabbis put harchakot, put boundaries in order to make sure that people will not go further with that. So the Memachek itself, it derived from the Meiri and Rashi that is rabbinic. Abaye said, Gzera shema'ikra b'shitrei hedyotot. There are some contract between lenders and borrowers, between a sales agent and the buyer. And those contracts that involve with transactions between two parties, that's the prohibition, that he is going, if you allow him to involve with this list, then he go ahead and he will make one read a regular business document. My benayu, what's the real difference between Rav Bibi and Abaye? Ika benayu dechatav akotel umidlei. So Rashi explains that there is a prohibition in the Torah that it's called mekach umimkar, to do business on Shabbat, because there is a certain decorum, a certain behavior for Shabbat. So now, if someone has a wall, in those days it was a wall and people write on the wall. So there is a difference between writing something on the wall or something that is really engraved there. I remember when we served in Gaza. So you also serve in a storm desert, you know what I'm talking about. So there are certain experts that used to go about 5-6 in the morning to read all these signs that people sprayed overnight, because the Hamas and different terrorist group, they want to give announcement to public. So what do? They mainly are very cowards, to say the least. So they go there when it's dark at night, take a wall and spray something that they're planning to do the next day, and then other people goes there at like when the sun rises and erase it. So the armed forces used to send someone who was very familiar before they erase it to copy or to photo what is exactly written, so they know what they're warning the people, what they're planning to do. But what we learn from that is there are two types of writing on the wall. There is a spraying some words and there is an engraving words on the wall. It's two different categories. So Lemanda Amar Shema Imchok, according to Rav Bibi, that the concern is may he erase lo chayshinan. Why? Because it's written very high on the wall, right? And it's very hard. It's not easy to go up and erase it. So usually when people does a violation, unwritten violation, it's because they're not aware that it's Shabbat. They just forget for a second. But if you need to take a letter and you need to go up and you need to erase it, etc., etc., then most probably during that period you realize that it's Shabbat, and therefore we're not concerned for so far acting. Uleman damar shema yikra. But the other one that speaks about the guest list, that the concern is that it's going to read chayshinan, so that if you allow him, so then they're going to have a regular business document between two parties. Uleman damar shema imchok, but according to Rav Bibi, that he said that the concern is he may go to erase, so neichush shema ikra. So we should be concerned that he's going to read from a regular business document. Vetu, and another reason, leshema imchok lo chayshinan, that if they have the list in a very high level of the wall, so you say that you're not concerned going to erase. Ve'atnan, we learn, if you remember, when we study the Mishna, page 11, we study lo yikra le'or haner. A person should not use a candle to read from a book. Why? Because he cannot see the words, so he moved the candle closer in order to see what is written. Ve'amar Rabbah, if you remember in page 12b, Rabbah said, אפילו גבוה שתי קומות, even the kettle is very high, which is like double size of average person, אפילו גבוה שתי מרדאות, even in the size of the two מרדאות. It's a high, those in those days they used to have a trainer for the animals, so they use it sometimes to measure heights. ואפילו 10 בתים זה אגבי זה, even at the size of 10 apartment one on top of the others, לא יקרא. So you may say that he cannot move the candle easily, but yet they said he shouldn't do it. So you now try to juxtapose and said, over there you said he shouldn't do the candle, and here you talk about the high writings on the wall. אלא יקרא בנאי, what's the real difference between Rav Bibi and Abaye? דכתב הקודל ומיתתה, which means he wrote it on the wall, but where? In the lowest part of the wall, which means that people can reach that level. Now here is the issue, למאן דאמר שמא ימחוק, the one that concerned Rav Bibi, that he may erase it, חיישינה, we are really concerned about it. למאן דאמר שמא יקרא, but the one who is concerned that he may read from a regular document, לא חיישינן, גודה בשטרה, לא מחלף. People not switch between writing on the wall and writing on a regular document, because usually a wall will not be confused with document, and reading from the wall will not cause one to then read business document. It's like you're comparing apple to oranges. It's two different things. So they said, by the way, the Ritva, the Rashba, the Ran, the Tosfot Arosh ask how you compare the first place, but we're not going there. The one who said that the concern is that he may read on those documents, so we should have this concern that even he is going to erase. So the difference between them is in a case where the writing is engraved on a tablet or on a board. So that's very different, because here use a knife to write it, or the special merchant book. So then it's very clear, according to Rav Bibi, that said Shema Imchok, the concern is that he may going to erase Lo Chayshinan. We are not concerned. Why? Because it's not easy to get rid of that. And according to Abaye, that he said Shema Yikra, that the concern is that he's going to read in those documents, Chayshinan. We are concerned because the style of writing is irrelevant in terms of the likelihood that one will end up reading business documents. So therefore, according to his opinion, also this type of list you cannot, it's forbidden to read on Shabbat. So then they ask, Uleman de Amar, according to Rav Bibi, that he said that they create because Shema Imchok, that he may erase it, Leichush Shema Yikra. So maybe we should be concerned that one read a business document. So V'chi teima tavla u'pinkas bishtara lo michalaf. You may say that how do you compare this? That the document versus other pinkases like those booklets, etc. How do you compare the two? Why you think that people make it the same category? Vatanya mone adam kama mi befnim. A person can count many guests will sit inside, which is in the most honorable place. You know, is a different seat. It's like the eastern side is the most honorable seat. It's vechama mi bachutz. and how many guests will sit outside. You see it nowadays. You have the restaurant, you have the seat inside and you have the seat outside. וכמה מנות עתיד להטיח לפניהם, and how many portions, how many plates he will place before them. So what happened is, so מכתב שעל גבי הכותל, אבל לא מכתב שעל גבי טבלה או פנקס. For writing that is on the wall, but not for writing that is on the tablets or a board. So, hey Chedami, what are you talking about? Ilema de katav michtav. If you say that it's speaking, they write in ink, that list, Mishna acha or Mishna acha. So what's the difference between the two? El alav dechayek. So you have to say that they've been engraved. The engraving, it's a different act than just writing. Uktane miktav she'al gabe hakotel, from something that is engraved on the wall, on the wall. אבל לא מכתב שעל גבי טבלה ופנקס, but not from a written on the tablet or on the board. So you see here that the Braita allowed to read from the list that engrave on the wall, and is not concerned that people will go ahead and allow a regular transaction document. So because the list on the wall cannot be changed to a paper list. So you see here that people are basically mixed between the two, and it's not necessarily that they differentiate between them. So how come you say that people are differentiate? It's like contradicted the Braita. Ela leolam. So you have to say that the difference is the katav akotel umidlei, that he wrote on the wall in a very high spot, as we said earlier, udekakash yalach de rabba, and then you may ask a question on the rabba, that he said that you not differentiate between the two. By the way, there is a very heavy disputation here between Rashi and Tosfot. We do not have enough time to deal with that, but basically the Baal HaMaor goes with Rashi, the Rif go with the Tosfot, they try to put the Rambam in between, but basically the question is, do we return to the original answer, that the concern is that it's written in the high level of the wall, and the decree is that he may erase it or not. There is a heavy disputation between Tosfot and Rashi, and there are who side with Rashi and there are who side with Tosfot. Anyway, so he said the Rabbah Tanaihi. That's depend on a Tanaic disputation that the Rabbah refer, which is it's not accepted by everyone. The Tanya. Mone Adam et orchav ve'et parperotav mipiv. A person can count by his mouth the list of his guests, אבל לא מן הכתב, but not in the written list. רבי אחא מתיר מכתב שעל גבי הכותל. רבי אחא allow if it's the written on the wall. And here is the disputation. Hechedame, give me an example of what's involved here. Ilema dekativ mitata. If you tell me that a person wrote in the low spot of the wall, leicho shema imchok, so you should be concerned that he's going to erase it. That was one of our concern. El alav dechatav umidlei, that he wrote it in a very high level, so people cannot get there easily. So Tanakama forbade it because he doesn't want to differentiate in the rabbinic prohibition between the two. Ushmamina de Rabbah Tanaye, that what Rabbah said here is depend on the disputation if he allowed to write in the high level or not, because the concern is that he may go to erase it. So you see here that it's very unlikely that people mix between a written document, business document, and something that's written on the wall. Soon you Shema Mina, and that's the final point, that the point of Rabbah, it's not agreed by everyone. So, and it's a disputation between Rav Bibi and Abaye. Now we going to juxtapose that disputation to another disputation. V'hanetanai kana netanai. So this disputation applied to another disputation, which is the Tanya. En ro'in b'mar'a b'Shabbat. Here we talk about using mirror on Shabbat. What's the idea? So especially in the old days, when they used a mirror, the theory is that one of the labor is called gozez. You have a goat or you have a lamb, and it is forbidden to shave the hair from the lamb on Shabbat. It's called gozez. So Rashi explained that at the first place, when a person look at the mirror, he realized that there is a hair coming out in the wrong spot, and he may go out and pull it out, that hair. And that's called gozez. So the first one said that we should not use a mirror. Not everyone agreed. Rabbi Meir matir. Some said Rabbi or Rabbi Yudah. It's depend on but the idea is he allow what? B'mar'a kvu'a b'kotel. If it's a permanent mirror on the wall, he allow to use it on Shabbat. Mishna kvu'a b'kotel. Why you need to tell me that you have to have a mirror that is permanently on the wall? So he's not the same concern that he's going to pull out some hair. And they said because since it's a permanent on the wall, so what are you going to do? He look at himself, he realized that there is a gray hair coming out. So he's now going to bring a knife or a scissor and then remove it. Takes time to do all of that, and meanwhile he realized that it's Shabbat and he will not do it. Versus she'eino kavua, if something that is a portable mirror. So what happened there, you may say name. So you may say that he's allowed to use it for the same reason. They said that until you bring the scissor, it takes time. So they said we are dealing here with a metal mirror. What is a metal mirror? So they said why we say that the metal mirror is forbidden? Because the person may remove a hanging hairs with it, which means that one may sharp edge on the mirror itself to cut the hair. So if the mirror is permanently set on the wall, we are not concerned that we will do it. So therefore, that's the difference. For sure, the Rif and the Rosh say that type of mirror, it's not part of the decree, even by one who's the most strict. Tanu Rabbanan. So you see, the bottom line is that we go. We soon go to the halacha. What's the final halacha by the Or HaChaim 302? Tanu Rabbanan. Ktav ha'malech tachat hatzura v'tachat hadiok naot. You go to Louvre in France, or you go to England, to those galleries or those museums, you see Mona Lisa. And there are people who visit those museums, they're spending endless times to read every word it's written under those pictures. Okay? So he said here that writing that it's under the picture or under the graven images, Asur likroto b'Shabbat. He said that you should not do it on Shabbat. Why? Because from that point, the next thing you do is reading business document. Because under those pictures you have a long descriptions of what happened and how. I must say that when I have the privilege to go to those places, so usually what happened with the tourists, the first hour, they are very interesting in every word that's written. And then over the hours, people less and less care for what all the details involved. But they said here, V'dyukna atzma, אף בכל אסור להסתכל בה, שנאמר אל תפנו אל אלילים. The Torah said in Vayikra in Leviticus 19 that we should not go to the idols. So he said even during the week you should not go to something that have images. So my Talmud, what exactly we derive from that? So Amar Rabbi Chanin al tifnu el mida'atchem. He said that do not push God out of your mind, as the Aruch said, by looking at these images, because there are different school of thought. Rashi said that it means the heart, halal, of the heart of a person. The Ran, the Tosfot read, and others said that you should go astray from thinking about Hashem. But the Tosfot and the Rosh and the Rambam, that they speak about specifically idol, something that designated for idol. You go to those countries and they have a different images of idols, then it's an issue. When they call it art, but basically the key point is it's not just looking, you are focusing on their idols, and it's an issue of violation of biblical commandment that you should not go astray, put your heart to those idols. Mefis Adamim Banam v'chulei. Now we talk about making some type of lottery with the family. So in general, we're not allowed to involve with lottery. But they said that if there is a household, in banavim nebitoim v'im acher lo. So if you need to make a lottery with the family members, that's one thing, but in strangers not. What's the idea of lottery? Mai tama? K'de Rav Yehuda amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda amar Shmuel bnei chavura. So a group of people go to eat together. Hamakpidim ze al ze, that they are mean to each other. Usually the Tosfot said that people go together, they share. Oh, I have a salad left over in my plate, I didn't eat it. Do you want it? Oh, I have a piece of cake in my plate. Do you like it? Well, take it, right? So usually it's not, but if the people are greedy and they're not nice to each other, right? So there is an issue here of a weight, measure, interest, and all kind of issue of mishum midah. They can violate the precept of the measuring, weighting, and counting merchandise on Shabbat and festival. Why? Because they're going to wait. Oh, you want that part, that is more than your part. So let's measure and see if it's matching what we exchange, etc. Umishum minyan, because they're going to count merchandise on Shabbat. Umishum lovin uporim, and because they are lending and borrowing and repairing, so all of that is forbidden. You remember we said that when you borrow something, even from the merchant, you should, or from your neighbor, you should not say that Shabbat or Yom Tov, you should not say I want you to give me a loan. That's forbidden to say on Shabbat and Yom Tov. 149b, Uchdivrei Beit Hillel af mishum ribit. And according to Beit Hillel, even they violate the prohibition of interest. What does that mean? As we discussed yesterday, that it turns sometimes that when you're doing business with other people, or you have transactions between two parties, it turns that you borrow half a bottle of grape juice, and you return the next day organic, full grape juice. You borrow regular Kedem grape juice with a high sugar, right? And you borrow half a bottle. Now you're returning, and I'm getting an interest, which is forbidden. Because now, what do? So it's a certain condition has to be when this is made between the two, if it's not a gift. So the Tosfot explained to us the concept of se'ah bese'ah. What is se'ah bese'ah? The Tosfot tells us It's based on GEMARA in Bava Metzia Ein Hey 75. If you have a friend and I borrow from you a bottle of grape juice, so you don't care if I bring a half a bottle, quarter of a bottle, full bottle, or if I bring anything at all. That's between friends. But if there are people who are mean to each other, so they start thinking about everything. Oh, I gave you a half a bottle, you gave me a three-quarter or a quarter of a bottle, etc. Situation like that, you enter the domain of violations. Because when the Tosfot explained, when you start that way, then you have a measurement, and then you have the issues, all kind of issues, that violation of Shabbat, when you start to make these transactions in account. Now we're going to the next stage. And they said, if that's the case, that you talk about lottery, so the whole idea of allow is because of measurements, because it's between friends. But if a person in his household, so why are you allowed to do it? So they said, בניו ובני ביתו, היינו תם כדי רבוד המרב, דמרבוד המרב מותר להלוות לבניו ובני ביתו בריבית, כדי להתאימן טעם ריבית. You're allowed to go and do it with the family, so you want to have them to learn to taste how difficult it is to repay a loan taken with interest. How you do that? So the rabbis explained that first and foremost it has to be that it's all you money, which means that that's based on the GEMARA in Bava Metzia 12, that even the interest is from your own money. So let's say you have a family. I'm blessed, Baruch Hashem, thank God, Kenai Nahora, with 5 kids. So I want to teach my kids how difficult is the interest. So I'm using only my money, and my son said, okay, I need $500. So I said, okay, you get it for 30 days. If you're not getting it, if you bring it back day after, is $502. If it's 2 days after, is $504. My daughter wants 1,000. Give 1,000, sign agreement. If it's how long you want it? 2 weeks, fine. If it's a day after 2 weeks, you're going to pay $1,002. If it's 4 days after the 2 weeks, you're going, etc., etc. So you playing with your own money, and it's nobody else's money. So therefore you may think that you want to teach them the bitterness of taking a loan and the whole involved with interest. You know, in English, by the way, the word mortgage that people are taking, mort is like the term of life, is like death of life. You are prisoner of the banks. The banks owns it, and they just transfer hands. So the whole idea of interest, you want to teach them the bitterness of the interest, and you're playing only with your own money. So what's wrong with that? But the GEMARA still have a problem with that. Why? Imagine a situation that you have 2 guys, let's call him Reuven and Shimon. They go to a restaurant, and Reuven said, I'm going to put $50, and Shimon does the same. Both of them order, and they said, make for me, the chef, special meal. All of a sudden, they sit there, the chef served 2 different meals, one worth $75 and one worth $25. Each of these people pay $50. What are you going to do now? Who is getting the big pot and who is getting the cheapest one? Each of them pay $50. What do you do now? So there is a concept we learned a little bit yesterday that it's called mesachek bekubiya. Someone who's go to Atlantic City or Ocean City or Las Vegas, and he's playing with the kubiya, with this ball that have numbers. So what's the problem to play on the table, the roulette on a table? What's the halachic problem of a professional gambler? So there are 2 problems. Problem number 1, it's called asmachta. What is asmachta? Asmachta meaning when Reuven, let's call me and one of you guys. Let's say I'm, God forbid, on a table, and I pulling out $50 bill. Place it on a table on number so and so on a table, and each of you guys putting a bill of $50. Now we have a large amount of $50 from everyone, right? Now he played the roulette, running. All of a sudden it turned to be my number. Now I'm collecting all the $50 from everyone. Correct is incorrect.
Correct.
So that's called asmachta. What's the problem with asmachta? In order to have, by the Torah, legal transactions between two parties, you need to have each party agreed, have the mind, has gmiut hadat, has the mind that they agree upon the transactions, which is, I'm selling these glasses, and you're willing to pay X amount of money in exchange. So you get the merchandise, and I get the money, and vice versa, which means that this transaction that agreed between two parties to have transaction of item from A to B and B to A. Here, when each of you place $50 on the table, what do you have in your mind? I'm going to win. But even I'm not going to win, I really believe that I'm going to get back my $50. How come? Listen carefully. That's the GEMARA mind better than any lawyer. If you know in advance that you're going to lose the $50, you're not going to put it on a table. Which means that in your mind it has to be that at least you're going to get back the $50. Since that happened, then it's asmachta, which means it's not a full transactions between the two parties. And asmachta lokanya, and this type of transactions is illegal, because it's not a full transaction between two parties. When I collected this money, it's not because you agreed to give me the money, and it's not because I give you something in exchange, and it's because I'm gaining from you loss. That's illegal by the GEMARA. The second point is she'ein oskim b'yishuvo shel olam, that these people, instead of occupying in a regular profession, go to work. In the Talmudic time it was Rabbi Yochanan Sandlar, all that rabbis that did all kind of labors. These people, that professional gamblers, they spend all the time on all different poker or different game, different roulettes, and that's not the way Hashem created the world. It's not the purpose of creation of the world, and they're gaining over this, so therefore we don't do that. So they said here you should say the same problem with the family members, because let's face it, what are you teaching them? Even you're teaching the children about the interest, but you're also teaching them all the other things that they learn. So so that's what he means. He said befis adam goralot, a person can do a lottery in banav imnei beto al shulchan. A person can do that on the table. Afilu mana gdola keneged mana ktana, even the big plate with the small plate, which is some form of, okay, you get it to 75, I get it 25. Who said that that's yours and not mine? Let's take a coin, flip the coin, and whoever get, you said something, I get something, we said together, whoever get the 3 is the winner. Right? That's called mesachik bekubiyah, the same as, right? So they said, my tama, what's the reason? Ked Rav Yehuda Amar, im banav im leto ein, im achirim lo. With the household, yes, but the others not. Why? My tama, ked Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, mana gdola ked mana ktana, av bechol achirim asu. My tama mishum kubiyah. So we just explained that, and that's what the GEMARA said in Bava Metzia 75, that even a father cannot lend money with interest to his children, because indirectly the father teaching them to make a quick money in an easiest way. I assume you know this famous story about a very wealthy father, that his son was lazy, waking up at 12 noons, not doing the work, lazy, get used the credit cards, etc. One day the father was very angry, said, if you're not going to work, I'm not going to give you anything. And the son wasn't care, he wake up at 12 o'clock and the mother gave him the money. The father realized after a couple of days he stopped giving his mother money. So, and he said to his son, if you are not going to work, you cannot stay in this house. It happened or it didn't happen? So the son and the father said, I'm going to come back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're not going to show me that you went to work, I'm going to throw you out. So the son wake up and he goes to work and he run and do some delivery, etc., 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 make $20. The father come back and what happened? He says, here is the $20 I made. Okay? The father take the $20, open the window and don't to throw it out. The son starts screaming, Daddy, I worked so hard on these $20. Don't do that. The father said, okay, now you can have it. So the point is, you're teaching your child to work hard to make a living, to spill blood until you make a living. Like, let's face it, you talk of the past generation, our parents, our grandparents, they struggle until they make anything. So you want the children not to learn to make a quick money in such a way, especially in the so therefore the GEMARA said in Baba Metzia, Ein Hey 75, even a father cannot do that with the children. It's forbidden. Even they take this type of flattery. It's not something that we allow. Then the Mishnah said Matilin Chalashin Al, which means the Kohanim may draw a lot the sacrifice, but not the specific portion. So they said, "My aval lo al amanot." So what is the meaning of the phrase, but not for the specific portion? Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Ravat Yaakov. We explained several times why they use bat, because the issue with the mother, which the issue of the father, which means that he wasn't the proper person to be honored. So he said, "Aval lo al amanot v'shel chol b'yom tov." So it means that not draw lots for the weekday, a portion of the festival. So the GEMARA challenged Pshita, it's obvious. מה הוא לתאמור לכתיב ועמך כמריבי כהן אפילו במנות דחול נמי? So you may say that because it's written in Hosea chapter 5, and for you people are like those who strive with the Kohanim, and in order to maintain peace between them, even lotteries for weekday portions also permitted. Kamash Melan, that it's not the case. ואמר רבי יעקב ברי דבת יעקב, כל שחברו נענש לידו ומחסנים אותו בחסדו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. He said a very strong statement that anyone who has caused his fellow to get punished, we don't bring, the Almighty will not bring him with his portion. That's in our language. Menalan. Well, how do you learn? למה משהו דכתיב ואומר השם יפתה את אחאב יעל ויפול מרמות גלעד ואומר זה בחוב וזה אומר בחוב ועצה רוח ואומר לפני השם אומר אני יפתנו ואומר עצה והייתי רוח שקר בפיל כל נביאה ואומר תפתה וגם תאכל צה ועשה כן. The story in the book of Kings chapter 22 that God asks in our language, anthropomorphic language, that they ask who is going to use the evil Ahab to do so, and it was the wind that said that. So ואמרים על מהי רוח, and we said what does that mean? Wind, so the spirit. So the Amar Rabbi Yochanan זה רוחו של נבות. That's the spirit of נבות, the נבות הישראלי, who asked to avenge his death at the hand of Ahab. It's like the spirit of the dead. ומה יצא? אמר רב צא ממחיצתי, they come out of my portion, God said. ודילמה היינו תמה דכתיב ודוברת שכנים לא יקון. They said in the book of Psalm 101 that someone who's untruthful will not be before the Lord. So basically, we learn it in the Psalm 104. They said, "Yitamu chataim min haaretz ursha'im odenam." So the story about the great Rebbe that he was like saying a strong word against people who are really, really wicked people. And his wife commented on that, and she said, "You have to very carefully read the word in the book of Psalms." They said, "We are praying that they do teshuvah." that the sin will be ended. But it's not, we're not praying that God punish the evil. That's not Judaism. In Judaism we pray that people will change the way to be better people. Because God loves all of his creatures and God wants the world to be good. So therefore our job is not to pray for any destructions or any bad that happened to the enemies or happened to the bad people, but that they should realize that they're making mistakes and making teshuvah and change the way for better. That's what it. אלא מאחה, שבעת הקלון מכבוד שתי גם אתה והרל וגומר. They said in the book of Habakkuk that you are filled with shame instead of honor. Drink you and be like who was uncircumcised. The cup of God's hands will turn you to 15 is that shall be upon you glory. שבעת הקלון מכבוד נבוכדנצר. The meaning of the sentence now we zoom in on each line. You are filled with shame instead of honor. That's referred to Nebuchadnezzar, the one who is responsible for the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, temple. שתי גם אתה והרל, you should feel drink, you and the person who was not circumcised. That's applied to whom? Tzidkiah. Tzidkiah was the king of the Jewish people that Nebuchadnezzar punished. חד הדחו לקרא בנבוכדנצר כתיב. One, the entire verse written in Nebuchadnezzar, that's what you avoid. Tzidkiah tzadika, ma yavel lemebale. Tzidkiah was a righteous man, so what should we do done with him? That the wicked man, which is Nebuchadnezzar, want to do harm to this righteous man. His foreskin was stretched, and as we explained, they said in the Proverbs, punishment is also not good for the righteous, which means that it's not good for a righteous person to ask to issue a punishment. Ein lo tov ela ra. There is no meaning it's not good other than evil. Uchtiv ki lo el chafetz resha ata lo yigurcha ra. They said in Psalm 5 that you are not a God that desires wickedness. Evil will not dwell with you. So which means tzaddik ata Hashem, that the Almighty is righteous. V'lo yagur b'migurcha ra, that evil will not dwell in your place of dwelling. So even a pious person, a righteous person, who asks God to punish the evil, cannot dwell in God's place, because that's not Judaism. We don't pray for the evil to be punished. My mashma, from what we refer, the hay chalashim lishon defurau, that's refer to the lots. דכתיב, איך נפלת משמיים מהלל בן שחר, הגעת לארץ חולה של גויים וגומר. They said in the book of Isaiah, how do you fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the morning? How do you been cut down from the ground, cutting lots over nations? So they said, אמר רבא בר אבונה, מלמד שהיה מטיל פור על גדולי מלכות, לדע זה בן יומו של משכב זכור. And Nebuchadnezzar was so evil that he took a lot among the royal leaders, and he wants to know which day was in service him with a homosexual relations, which means that he was in that mindset. Uchtiv kol malchei goyim kulam. They said in Isaiah that all the king of the nation, all of them, sip in glory, every one of his hours. Amar Rabbi Yochanan shenachum mishkav zachur. Yochanan said at the meaning of the verse that they arrested from the forceful, or depending you look at the homosexual relations, because he was evil. And that's what he was looking. ואמר רבי יוחנן כל ימיו של אותו רשע לא נמצא שחוק בפה כל בריאה. They said that all the days of that evil, of that Nebuchadnezzar, wicked man, that no one have laughter in his mouth. שנאמר, נחש שקטה כל הארץ פצחו רינה. They said that upon his death, Isaiah said, in 14, the whole earth is at rest, is quiet, they break forth into singing. בכלל דעתה שלו לא עבר רינה, meaning that up to this point, it wasn't any song. אמר רבי יצחק, אמר רבי יוחנן, אסור לעמוד בביתו של אותו רשע, שנאמר וסירים רקדו שם. They said, in Isaiah 13, that the demons should dance there, which apply to that wicked man. That, in other words, it's referring that in his house, it's a harmful forces. The Maharsha said, it's not the place that a person should dwell. ואמר רבי יהודה אמר רב, בשעה שביקש אותו רשע לעשות אותו צדיק כך, that when Nebuchadnezzar, as we said, that he has a forceful homosexual relations with people, evil men, so one of the thing he wants to do that to the tzidkiah, to the righteous man tzidkiah, he wants to forceful to that. נמשכה עולתו 300 אמה והייתה מחזרת כל המצבה כולה, which means that God make his foreskin to stretch, in the Talmud language is like using that exaggeration, 300 cubits, and he surrounded the entire company of Nebuchadnezzar feast. So they said, שנאמר שבעת הקלות מקרבות שתה גם אתה והערל. They said in the book of Chavakot, you are filled with shame instead of honor, drink you and be like who was uncircumcised. So Arel בגימטריה 300 אבי, that Arel has numerical value of the 300. אמר רב יהודה אמר רב, בשעה שירד אותו רשע לגיהינום, רעשו כל יורדי גיהינום. When even Nebuchadnezzar was caused the destruction of the temple and forceful relations, so they said that the whole Gehinnom is like hell, all the everyone was already descend there, tremble. אמרו שמא למשול עליהם הוא בא, maybe he comes there to help to control other people, או לחלות כמותם הוא בא, or be like weaken like them, שנאמר גם אתה חולת בנו אתה נמשלת. They said in the book of Isaiah, have you become weak like us, have you become like us? So these Hebrew words that use the word חולנו כמונו אלינו נמשלת, it's like us, or you come to rule over us. יצתה בקול ואמרה, the voice from heaven emerges and said, ממין העם תרדה והשכבה את ערלים. They said in Ezekiel, whom do you pass in beauty? Go down and be laid with the uncircumcised, which means to confront Nebuchadnezzar is the same status as Ginom as everybody else. איך שבת נוגס שבתה מדהבה. So they said they said in Isaiah, how has the oppressor seized, the executor of gold has seized. אמר רבי יהודה אמר רב שבתה ומה זו שאמרה. ולמעשה the meaning of the verse is the nation will say medod vehave, measure and bring a lot of money. That's what Rashi in Maharsha said. So madheva is medod vehave, ve'ika de'amra shamra meod meod avi belo midah. They said bring much without measure, which again madheva, it means that it's a lot. There is a Ben Yoyada that hold it in a different way, but that's the we should see the Maharsha, the difference between the two memorot. They said in Daniel, and surpassing greatness was added unto me. He said that the Nebuchadnezzar rode atop of male lion, וקשר תנין בראשו, and tied a serpent to its head, fulfilling לקיים מה שנאמר, וגם את חסדי נתתי לו לעובדו. That they said in Jeremiah 27, then in the beast of the field I have also given to him to serve him, which means to show that he controlled also the animals. So again it shows that the evilness of Nebuchadnezzar during the era of destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. Now we're going to a practical halachot. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 307 and also the Rambam Hilchot Shabbat chapter 23. It is prohibited to read lists of guests or food that has been prepared for a meal on Shabbat, even if they are written high up on a wall. The rationale is that the concern that one might read business documents on Shabbat, even if the list is engraved rather than written on a tablet or on a board, it is still prohibited to read the list. However, if the list engraved on a wall, it is permitted to read it. That's the opinion of Abaye. How about looking at the mirror? So they said in the Orach Chaim, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Shin Bet 302, one may not look into a metal mirror on Shabbat since it generally has a sharp edge that can be used to trim hairs. That's in the old days. But even if the mirror is attached permanently to a wall, it is still prohibited to use it. However, it is permitted to look into any other type of mirror with regard to which there is no concern that one will use it to trim one's hair. So again, that's the Tosefta. How about Ktava Me'alech Tachat Atzura? It is prohibited to read the writing underneath pictures and graven images on Shabbat, lest one read business document. So if you go to the museum, it's an issue to do it on Shabbat. Also about just in general, to see idolater image, it is prohibited. Listen carefully. It is prohibited. This is a Tosfot, a Shach, Rambam, Hilchot Avodah Zarah, chapter 2, and Shulchan Aruch Yoadea 142. It is prohibited to look at an idolater's image, because one may derive pleasure from looking at it, even pleasure. We also talk about greedy people. Bnei Chavura makpidim ze al ze. If a member of a formal group eats together on Shabbat or a festival, and they are fastidious, they are particular with one another, insisting on fair compensation for each item, they are prohibited to exchange portions with one another or return a portion that one has previously borrowed from another. This constitutes a violation, the Rambam said, of conducting business on Shabbat or festival. The Shulchan Aruch and other do not mention this halacha, because according to the interpretation of the Sefta, the law with regard to such a group is no different than the law with regard to an informal group of people. That's what the Beit Yosef said. We learn also today about a person draw a lottery with his children. It is permitted to distribute food portions to one's family members based on a lottery, provided that the portions are of equal size. However, it is prohibited to do so with other people. If the portions are of unequal size, even family members may not draw lots for them, because this violates the prohibition of gambling, as the Rav said, which the Rambam permits drawing lots for unequal portions with one's family member. The reason is it's prohibited to play dice or any other game in which the winner takes more than the loser. This is considered some form of stealing by a rabbinic decree. Remember, we talk about asmachta. We also talk about a priest time. The Kohanim, the priest, are permitted to draw lots for portions of a festival sacrifice on a festival, because it is an act of that demonstrates love for the mitzvah. However, it's prohibited for them to do so for non-sacred food. So just to wrap up, to make sure that we understand the point of asmachta, playing game, to be a gambler, there are two issues. One is not full transactions between two parties. So therefore, each party, when they put the money on the table, they're expecting at least to get the money back. Otherwise, they don't put the money on the table. Second, she'enam oskim b'shuvo she'olam, because these people, instead of occupying in a regular profession, they're wasting their livelihood, or they're wasting their life over gambling. So these two reasons that we're not accepting any witness. If someone needs to sign a ketubah, someone needs to sign a witness in the rabbinic court, we not accept a gambler as accepted a witness on the court.